will see also the interface itself that I'm going to use to explain a little bit how things work. But you can also then press again on live video, and then you will see both my face and that of the chair of the standing committee. So I just want to go through a few of these icons. First, start in the bottom left. That's the language selector. Depending on the language you want to listen to, you can choose between floor, English, French, and Spanish. Then I'm going to go to the right into this whole list of icons. I'm going to start with the bottom. Here it says active user list. So it's the equivalent of the list of participants. Really, you can see who has connected right now to join the meeting. The other thing I want to point out is a little bit further up. It's the documents. I have uploaded some documents for the meeting. These are quite straightforward. They are in the 3 languages. It's the agenda, which is you've already received from the standing committee chair, and one document on the terms of reference for a working group on zoonotic disease that you also have already received, and all those in in all 3 languages. The final one I want to point out is the one for messaging. That's quite important. For those of you who connected, you can reach out to the operator. You click on messaging, then you go to locate the tab where it says operator, and that one will help you. That person will help you if you have any problems. The other important tab is where it says participants. So for those of you who might have microphone problems or connectivity problems, if there are any substantive comments you want to make, you're welcome to put it in the on the participants in the messages. It's of course much better if you take the floor and if we can see you and you can speak. But if there's a problem, it's a good plan B. And the Secretariat will be monitoring that chat and will be summarizing or reading the comments at the end of every agenda item. So your opinion, your comments will be taken into account. I would also like to inform you that this discussion is being live streamed on YouTube, and that the video recording of the meeting will then be available on the CITES YouTube channel. We hope that no one objects to this recording, and if you do so, just please let us know. And as a final note, I think before we begin the discussion and the chair of the standing committee launches the discussion, may I ask that the head of delegation of each standing committee member request the floor and turn on their camera so that we can all see each other to reconstitute a little bit that sense of connection that you have when you attend a real meeting. So can I please ask that everybody who is the head of a delegation of each standing committee member click on request to speak and turn on your cameras. And I will grant you the floor. Maybe a few more can request the floor. We have quite a few on screen. And once everybody is connected, I will leave the chair of the standing committee to launch the discussion and say hello to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Hélène, and thank you very much for walking everyone through the system. And thanks for everyone for turning on their camera. I asked Hélène if we could do that at the beginning, because otherwise it's a little awkward to feel like you're speaking into an empty space. But I also recognize that it's difficult sometimes to leave your camera on for the whole period, and that there can be bandwidth issues. So after this opening, if it's easier for your hearing to turn off the camera, that's fine. I just wanted this first opportunity to see what faces were available and to say hello to everyone. So hello, everyone, and Happy New Year, and welcome to this informal gathering where we can go over our progress in this most unusual of years. I think I want to start our meeting first by acknowledging that we have lost some friends. And in particular, I was really saddened to hear of the death of our colleague, Anton Mesnik of the Russian Federation. And I don't believe colleagues from the Russian Federation have been able to join us, but certainly he has been a longstanding participant in the standing committee, and my condolences really do go to his family and his colleagues. And indeed, I really do want to extend my condolences to all of us, all of you who have lost any friends, colleagues, or loved ones recently and in this past extraordinary year. And so maybe we can just take a moment to reflect on the passing of Anton and on the difficult year many of us have faced in 2020. Thank you, everyone. So as you can see, we're having a nice virtual opportunity to get together and hear about some of the progress we've made. And certainly, I think about a year ago, or a little less than a year ago, we did not imagine that the current situation would last quite as long as it has. But we are not back to normal. And in Canada, for example, we are experiencing a quite active and vigorous second wave of COVID-19. And so certainly from my government, we will not be traveling anytime in the near future. And that really is an opportune moment to think about how we have progressed so far and the kind of work we want to try to do in 2021 under the circumstances. So I am really happy to have this opportunity to touch base with everyone here. What we have planned right now is an informal gathering. It's an informal meeting. I recognize that the standing committee decided that we were not in a position back last spring to feel comfortable with virtual meetings, and that there's a lot of complications with trying to take decisions in a virtual meeting. So really what we want to do right now is have an opportunity to get some updates on activities that have been undertaken by the Secretariat, by the Animals and Plants Committee, by the Finance and Budget Subcommittee. And then I would like to get from you a signal of how we want to approach the next few months in terms of the activities we want to undertake. So this informal gathering is meant to complement the emails that I send to you, which are to keep you informed and engaged in key decisions as they occur. Fundamentally, I want to use this opportunity to give you a vehicle to inform me of the key issues for consideration in your region, and of course, to provide opportunities to be informed of activities that have been undertaken, as I mentioned. I am looking for your comments, for your questions, for your advice, and I really hope that you find this useful. And I look forward to your active engagement. So our meeting today will begin. I'm going to turn to Yvonne to give us a couple of opening remarks. And then just as a reminder, we will turn to have an update from the Secretariat, followed by the chair of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee. We will then ask the Animals and Plants Committees to give us a brief update on some of their work. We will note the two items that have been submitted to the Standing Committee for consideration under Rule 20, so for postal decision. I'll ask the committee if there's any other items that you think are going to be submitted for such a decision. And then finally, we will talk about the prospects for 2021 in terms of meetings. So with that, I will ask Yvonne, please, to make some opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. Nice to see you all together here today. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to just say a few words. I don't want to take a lot of time. I know the time is short. Just to wish everybody Happy New Year and hopeful that this will be a different year. I say that I hope it's going to be a less socially distanced year where we can be together more, and hopefully this is going to happen now that we have the promise of the vaccines that are already starting in many countries. But it is a difficult time for everyone. All over the world, there's still a second wave, third waves that are quite difficult. But I am proud of my team. I'm proud of all of those who have been, and grateful to all of those who have been working very hard and still committed to CITES, still giving their all to make sure that the work can go forward. So we are absolutely thankful for all the support you have been continuing to give us during these last very difficult months. So thank you, and I look forward to giving a little background information about what we have been doing. Carolina, I don't know if you would like me to continue on with that, or do you want to say something before I continue? Okay, because that way we save some time. Just to let you know a little bit about our telecommuting, we have still been very much available. We are all very well connected. We had a month and a half where we had been starting to return back to the office. It was up and down a little bit, slowly, 20% up to 45% was allowed to return to the office. But then, of course, we had the new wave that came through by the government of Switzerland that we all go back home and have less of a burden on the situation in Switzerland, especially when it comes to public transport, where it had more communication of the virus. So we were asked to go back to our homes. So since some months ago, we've returned back, working well. We continue the routine work. You have seen we have already released 63 notifications since we have started this remote working. All the documents for the originally scheduled AC31 and PC25 were produced on schedule, and the Secretariat has fully supported the intersessional work of the science committees. We also have moved forward on a number of studies and projects that were emanating from COP18. And for example, I can give you the new NDF guidance, a review of significant trade database, the species studies on big cats, on vultures, amphibians, eels, seahorses, boswellia, ornamental fish, etc. All of this work is going on, plus the project work that we had on sharks and rays, teat fish, queen conch, etc. We have been taking active part in all of the global discussions on COVID-19 and zoonotic disease issues, either taking an active part or monitoring these to try to always ensure that the CITES, I would say, CITES advantages that we have already with resolutions, etc., that do ensure that disease emergence doesn't happen, particularly with transport and other ways that CITES operates. We have been supporting all of the Standing Committee intersessional working groups, and here's a very brief summary of the status of the work of these working groups. For example, rules of procedure, which has been chaired by Canada. We are making good progress on all aspects of the mandate and should be able to complete its work before the next meeting of the Standing Committee. The strategic vision, which is chaired by Georgia, it has been a little quiet since April. We need to activate it now in 2021 and work towards having some results before the next Standing Committee meeting. We also have been working in the IPLC and rural communities, which is chaired by Kenya. And the chair of the working group should be soon initiating the work of this working group. We encourage this work to start. On livelihoods, which is being chaired by Peru. And this also we encourage to be started by the chair of the working group. On capacity building, the chair is New Zealand. The results of the questionnaire that were sent in 2020 has been summarized, and we have published it for consideration by the AC and PC. And we are waiting for the ACPC's advice. But in the meantime, the working group is progressing with other discussions, for example, providing guidance to the Secretariat to refine and consolidate the areas of capacity building effort, reviewing a number of resolutions and decisions. So this work is quite active and ongoing now. It may, of course, the completion of the work depends on the work of the ACPC, but and will require a full intersessional period and may roll over to the next period. So we are already watching this. On resolution 11.3, the chair is USA. We are awaiting the first substantive message to the working group members on this resolution. So we encourage that this be sent soon. And on electronic systems, which is being chaired by Switzerland, we had a CITES World Customs Organization International Workshop on modern customs procedures for improved control of trade in CITES listed species. This was held online from 7 to 9 December of last year. using this same platform of Kudo. The working group met online to consider the elements for recommendation to the standing committee. Meeting took place after this online workshop took place. The working group is planning to meet again in January or February of the year to review the draft documents that have been prepared by the Secretariat and then prepare the recommendations to the standing committee. So this work should be completed by the second quarter of this year, and it's quite actively ongoing. On purpose codes, the chair of Australia is quite active, progressing well on definitions, amendments, and other complex aspects of the TORs. And they are expected to conclude their work on time for the next standing committee ordinary meeting. On biotechnology, which is chaired by China, the working group has identified potential types and cases of parts or derivatives produced through biotechnology and will focus on providing advice on guidance on those. The working group will also consider information provided in response to the notification to the parties that has been sent. On non-wild trade, the chair is Spain. Already a first draft of outputs against 2 mandates is available. We're hoping that it will be ready for the next meeting of the Standing Committee as well. On ivory stockpiles, which is chaired by the European Union, it is making progress, and we expect that it will be able to report in the spring on this progress. And finally, on annotations, the chair is Canada. It is also progressing well. It has identified a list of priority issues to be addressed, and it is expected that the working group will be able to present recommendations on those issues to the next meeting of the Standing Committee. So we have a bit of a mixed bag where some need to still initiate the work, others are progressing quite well. We'll probably have something to report on at the next Standing Committee. Maybe some that will probably need a little bit more time. I invite, of course, the chairs, if they wish, the chairs of the working groups to say a few more words if they have some further updates since we last put this together. The Secretariat has web posted 5 draft Standing Committee documents, as you know, waiting for comments from stakeholders. So far, we have received 10 responses with some very helpful comments. We will have further documents for advanced review to be posted shortly. And the comments made, of course, will be fully addressed in the final document that will be presented to the Standing Committee at a future meeting, as to be decided soon. We have also released 14 information documents which update parties and stakeholders on progress with ongoing compliance work, and these were posted on the CITES website in November. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, for providing us with that short summary of your activities. And that was really useful and quite thorough. So I appreciate that very much. It gives me a good sense of where we've made some progress. So before I turn to the next agenda item, I will see if there's any questions from members of the Standing Committee. If you have any questions, please just request the floor. And then Ellen or someone will alert me. And I know there can sometimes be a lag with these systems, but perhaps what I will do, not seeing any requests, is I will turn to the next item on the agenda. And of course, if a Standing Committee member did want to ask about Yvonne's report, do feel free to request the floor and I will adapt accordingly. So the next item we wanted to talk about was to get a briefing from the work of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee. And so I believe our colleagues from Switzerland are going to take the lead on that. So I will ask, I don't know if Martin is on the line or whom is going to make that presentation. So please take the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Secretary General. Good afternoon, colleagues. Can you hear me? And I think my camera is now working as well to switch computer because our governmental infrastructure wouldn't allow me to do so. But now with private means, I think I can join you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding your request, Madam Chair, we had an online meeting of the subcommittee on Budget and Finance was held on 15th of October. Switzerland was asked as the depository government to act as the interim chair, which we accepted, in an understanding that we do that on an interim basis, and as soon as we can meet physically, an ordinary chair will be appointed by the subcommittee. The Secretariat was so kind to support us with documentation, which we will review and discuss. If you allow, Madam Chair, I will give you a short summary of the major items. As you know, we are an advisory committee, so we do not take discussions, but we prepare for your advice, Madam Chair of the Standing Committee, decisions. So we proposed you that on an exceptional basis, the SC should approve a transfer of savings in the amount of $280,700 from the 2020's meetings line into 2021. As I understand, but please correct me if I was wrong, we only got so far one comment by Japan, but it was more of a notation, and I think Japan as well, which is another member of the Standing Committee, would agree with that proposal. Madam Chair, you put that proposal in the Postal electronic vote in an understanding with an adoption by 25th January. So what we are dealing with now is on an informational basis, and it is up with the members of the Standing Committee to make a decision by the 25th January. Further, we discussed and we approved made a recommendation for approval of the budget and the trade of the trust fund so far. We also nominated Namibia to represent the subcommittee in the Standing Committee's intersessional work group on capacity building. This is the discussions we took, respectively those were the recommendations we made to the Standing Committee. In the meantime, we will, probably by electronic means, going on with the consultation with UNEP on the program support cost allocation policy. Further, we will further elaborate on the language strategy and look at UNEP's guidelines on reimbursements of communications costs for virtual meetings for eligible sponsored participants. Madam Chair, this is already all, and of course I'm ready to answer any questions which may arise. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thanks. Sorry about that. My mouse escaped me for a second. Thank you very much, Martin and Switzerland, for agreeing to be our interim chair and for making that report. And indeed, as you noted, the recommendations from the Finance and Budget Subcommittee have already been reviewed by the Standing Committee for any advice. And now, based on that review, we are now between now and 24th of January waiting to see if there's any objections from members of the Standing Committee to adopting the recommendations that were presented by the Finance and Budget Subcommittee. So again, this is a good opportunity. If you have any questions regarding the report, you feel free to raise your hand, request the floor, and we can put those questions to the Finance and Budget Subcommittee. And I will say that our colleague referenced the ongoing discussions with UNEP consultations. As Standing Committee members know, I did also have a bilateral meeting, virtual meeting, with the Executive Director of UNEP, where this was one of the issues we discussed. And I am certainly hopeful that the Finance and Budget Subcommittee is getting some more of the detailed information that we discussed with the ED to help continue your discussions on the program support costs and the use of program support costs. And I believe UNEP has also offered to provide some detailed reporting on this work to the committee if it is useful. So again, I really want to thank you, Martin, and I want to see if there's any requests for the floor before we turn to the next agenda item. So, Len, Sophie, I think I see a request.
Yes, that's Honduras.
Okay, please then, Honduras, you have the floor. And Honduras will be followed by Israel.
Señor Suazo,
Mr. Suazo, you can speak. You need to just press the microphone button. Mr. Suazo.
¿Puede hablar?
Could you try and speak, Mr. Suazo?
Yes, why don't we turn to our colleague from Israel, and then we will come back to Honduras to see if we can resolve our technical challenges. So Israel, please. So you should know that when you're given the floor, your buttons will turn a different color. If you press the release mic, what happens is you remove yourself from the floor. So if you've accidentally done that, just simply press request the floor again, and we will turn to you. Okay, I don't know if there's problems with the... Oh, here we go. Okay. Israel, please.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning. My colleague Shira Yeshve was going to ask, but somehow she seems to be having some technical difficulties. And basically what we were trying to find out after following the budget report is that there were a lot of issues that came up at the COP that were directed to the standing committee, and we would like to find out maybe a report from the Secretariat about a lot of these issues that were listed as pending funding, or that securing funding was needed in order for them to be activated and to be processed. So in terms of the budget, it's not directly to do with the budget report, but it has to do with the costs of projects and issues that were raised at COP 18 in terms of items that needed funding to be obtained. So we would wonder if there's a report from the Secretary to the Standing Committee on this issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon, and thank you for speaking on behalf of your colleague. So Yvonne, I will turn to you to see if you have any brief answers. What I'm taking from Israel is you're interested in knowing sort of the progress in funding all the various decisions from the Standing Committee, and if there's been any updates on that progress. So if there's anything you can provide right now, Yvonne, that would be great. And if not, I would suggest we also follow up. Over to you, please, Yvonne.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Israel, for the question. We have sent out recently, you're absolutely right, we had sent out a notification at the very beginning after COP18 to show what was needed to be funding. It was quite a large amount, I think somewhere around the $7 million that were needed. We have received some funding. We are moving ahead on those where we have found funding. We have also been raising funds from, we're about to finish an agreement with FAO on a UN to UN agreement to work on wood, on timber. We are also working with Germany on something to fund non-detriment findings, the work of the COP18 decisions on non-detriment findings. So we're very actively trying to find as many funds as possible to be able to move forward. However, It is not all covered. Many decisions are still remaining to be covered. We have recently sent out a notification on that, and we implore all of the parties to be able to look into their budgets and see if there's any possibilities to keep funding the work of the Secretariat and the work that we have to continue doing after COP18. Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. I think that answers Simon's question, so we appreciate that. I don't see any further requests for the floor on this item. So I'm going to move us then to the next item, where we were going to get a summary of some of the work being undertaken by the chairs of the Animals and Plants Committee. I have my two chairs present. I don't know who was planning to speak first. Neither does our Animals Committee chair, so perhaps I will see, perhaps, Flor, if you're available, why don't we start with the Plants Committee?
Oui, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam, for giving me the floor. And I would like to extend greetings to all standing committee participants.
So I want to thank for the opportunity. The summary of the implementation of the work assigned to the Plant Committee. This is accomplished through a roadmap to coordinate 2020 to 2021 virtual or e-work by a way forward each of the 41 PC25 agenda items, if appropriate. The roadmap covers 5 items, namely intersessional decision making. The second is about formal intersessional working group, then informal PC working groups, consultation of PC members via a closed intersessional process, and for the end activities for which no action is envisaged before PC25. For your information, this roadmap was agreed by the Plant Committee. So, concerning intersessional decision making, the items involved are that are proposed to be put forward to the PC members for a procedure for intersessional decision making this one are confirmation of the election of the chair and vice chair, the PC work plan in the document PC 25 7.2, terms of reference for the formal PC working groups, and the confirmation of PC members to participate to existing standing committee working group, for instance, on capacity building. For the second items concerning formal PC working groups, they are confirmed through a notification. There are 6 intersessional formal working groups were established, and they are expected to report to PC 25, even if they will not be concluded for this meeting session. Among these working groups, for instance, we got the working group on identification of timber and other wood products, or working groups related to African or neotropical tree species, and the joint ACPC working group, identification of materials. There's no possibility to get report from none of them to SC 73, as PC 25 is likely to be held after. Depending on the relevant decision or on the mandate, inputs are expected either for SC 74 or next COP. If no specific action is from SC 74 is needed. For the item concerning informal intersessional PC working groups, it might be useful for the PC to arrange for informal consultation with parties, organizations, key stakeholders, or experts. We got a total of 8 informal intersessional working groups, such as Appendix 1 listed species, NDF, or ORCID annotations. This activity of each of these groups has been already defined. These informal working groups are led by PC members as per the work plan, with monitoring by CITES Secretariat. 1st March 2021 is proposed as deadline to finalize the recommendation. Then we have a closed intersessional process. This is related to processes where only PC members are charged with decision making, most notably certain phases of the review of significant trade ST process. This also includes intersessional consultation aimed at allowing the Secretariat to report to standing committee. Therefore, the full PC memberships, including alternates, are involved in the different working groups that are monitored by PC chairs or vice chair and Secretariat. Then we have activities for which no action is envisaged before PC 25. There are some items, indeed, that are not likely to progress prior the meeting, likely to be held this year for different reasons, such as an implementation of the relevant decision not expected to have sufficiently progressed, or lack of information or materials that could be useful to review prior the meeting, and so on. For example, you have the new set of RST PC country combinations that is to be selected at PC 25. Review of CITES provisions related to trade in species not of wide source pending to SC 73 outcomes, or the item about CITES strategic vision that is to be discussed also at this meeting, the Standing Committee 73. To sum up, on the 41 items on the PC agenda, PC 25 agenda, 26 required to be reported to a Standing Committee or COP, and on these items, 19 will be reported on a Standing Committee 74. Other items, such as the one related to city building, depend on Standing Committee working groups that have been established. The ones, if not ready or agreed by the PC 25, will continue by intersessional progress to revise or to draft a resolution as needed. Now, I want to make a short comment about the way to conduct the next session of the PC meeting. PC members express preference for face-to-face meeting scenarios, but they are also fully aware of the contingencies posed by the current COVID-19 pandemic, and therefore open to explore virtual scenarios for PC 25 meeting. If in-person meeting becomes a possibility, mid to late 2021 might be more realistic for the majority of PC members. That's why PC members think that it's wise to accept the invitation from France from a session in Lyon in May or June 2021. However, we have to take account the travel condition of the members and the respect of the quorum and the participants for subsequent question of moral responsibility. We have also to consider how to conduct the manner to conduct this PC 25 meeting in case of a virtual one with a working program session across time zones to optimize participant attendance. For important items, because of large discussions that might arise from them, we have to choose schedules that can accommodate maximum of people. And PC members agreed to schedule a call by early February. Je vous remercie pour votre attention.
Merci, Flood. That was a very thorough report, which is greatly appreciated. So we heard from Flood on some of the activities of the agenda, the COP agenda items that were directed to the Plants Committee. And we also heard at the end a bit of some of reflection from the Plants Committee members in terms of advancing their work possibly through a virtual meeting in light of the current COVID situation. For this latter point, I think I'll rest now. We've heard these reflections from the Plants Committee, and we will return to that point when we come to our agenda item 5 on planning ahead for meetings. And before I open the floor for questions, I'm going to turn to the chair of the Animals Committee to provide his update, and then I'll ask the standing committee members to request the floor if they have any questions regarding these two updates. So I will turn now to the chair of the Animals Committee. Matthias, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. I will report on the activities of the Animals Committee since we last had contact with the Standing Committee. So following the postponement of the 31st meeting of the Animals Committee, which was scheduled to take place from 13th to 17th July 2020, the Secretariat initiated a procedure for intersessional decision-making in accordance with Rule 19 of the Rules of Procedure of the Animals Committee. The results of this intersessional decision-making procedure was reported in notification 057/2020 to the parties on 22nd September of 2020, namely the following: confirmation of the election of the AC Chair and Vice Chair, approval of the AC work plan as outlined in document AC 31 Doc 7.2, the nomination of Cecilia Lougheed, the alternate representative of the North American region, as AC representative on SC working group on capacity building, agreement on the scope of the work on marine and ornamental fish, and agreement to establish 6 formal working groups and call for interested members, namely definition of the term appropriate and acceptable destinations, West African vultures, precious corals, African lions, zoological nomenclature, and ID materials. This is a joint working group with the Plants Committee. The members of the Animals Committee subsequently met virtually on the 27th of November in 2 two-hour sessions to agree on a roadmap for this intersessional work for 2020 and 2021. The roadmap was developed working towards a meeting in May or early June of 2021. In addition to the 6 formal working groups, the members also agreed to advance a number of additional items through informal discussion groups or via intersessional processes that are restricted to the members. Assigning a coordinator to lead on each of these items was also done. Concerning the 6 formal working groups, the membership has meanwhile been finalized, and the chairs and co-chairs have made contact with the members to get the work underway in these working groups. They are expected to deliver outputs by mid-March 2021. We also agreed to arrange another virtual meeting of the AC members in early February to discuss what progress has been made with the various working groups, formal working groups. In addition, a total of informal discussion groups, as mentioned before, will be established, consisting of members and invited experts who will be consulted on an ad hoc basis. For instance, when a study or report becomes available for review. And the topics that we will look at include Appendix 1 listed species, NDFs, sturgeon and paddlefish, amphibians, eels, sharks and rays, seahorses, pangolins, songbirds, banggai cardinal fish, cygantelope, queen conch, tortoises and freshwater turtles, and marine ornamental fishes. The membership of these small informal groups will be decided on by the coordinator of the group, which is always a member of the Animals Committee, in consultation with the AC chair. Outputs of these informal discussion groups will be on a case-by-case basis. They could take the form of a written report, verbal update, or information document, depending on timing and the progress made intersessionally. Some items that involve consultation with the members of the committee through the chair, for instance, consultations on the resolution Conf 12.8, on the review of significant trade, or resolution Conf 17.7 on captive breeding, will take place as outlined in the relevant resolution. Informal consultation may also occur with members on additional items as and when the need arises. Concerning the selection of new species country combinations under both of these processes, it is suggested that no new cases would be selected for a review in the event of a virtual meeting scenario. We think that these decisions take a good consultation with as many members as possible, and therefore we don't think that a virtual meeting could satisfy that. The next round of cases selected for review would therefore occur at the first meeting of the AC after COP19, in line with progress and timeline set out in the resolutions. For your information, there's also a web page dedicated to the intersessional work of the AC. It has been established and it provides updates on the ongoing work if you are interested to be updated in the meantime. In terms of planning the Standing Committee's work program for 2021, it should be noted that there are 26 items where the Animals Committee is expected to provide inputs to the SC agenda. Of these 26 items, 8 are to be discussed jointly with the Plans Committee. These items could only be discussed at the September meeting of the Standing Committee, particularly if it is proposed that there would be no discussion on compliance matter at the April meeting. Concerning the 2020 meetings input, I will rest here and I will come back to this item whenever you will table it again. And just let me highlight the continuing and professional and excellent support that the AC has been getting from the Secretariat, which is very much appreciated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair of the Animals and Chair of the Plants Committee. That was really wonderful to hear and to get a good update on your work. I want to congratulate both of your committees. You've clearly managed to pivot in this unusual circumstance and advance what you are able to advance under this under the light of the fact that we cannot have face-to-face meetings. And so I appreciate the energy and effort that must have taken both from yourselves and the Secretariat and the members of your committee. And I congratulate you on being able to move things forward. I'd like to see if there are any requests for the floor in terms of any questions we have to the Animals Committee Chair or Plants Committee Chair regarding the work of their committees and some of the items they raised in terms of the roadmap. And I also note that the Animals Committee Chair did also point us to the CITES website, where I believe some of this is also posted. Okay, so I think there's some requests. Israel. So I will ask Israel, please, to take the floor.
Yes, very briefly, thank you, Martin, for the report. We note that there seems to be quite a lot of these informal discussions, and we just want to be sure that there's going to be adequate transparency for observers and non-member parties to be able to input into this process. As you said, these are not necessarily for making decisions, but more for informing the committee on discussions. But I realize under the COVID situation, it's often hard to hold these open meetings, but we always have to be aware to ensure that there's plenty of transparency of our work, and certainly for observers to have an opportunity to know what's going on and that decisions aren't being made behind their back. Thank you.
Thanks, Israel. And I see Flor, you wanted to take the floor. Do you want to react?
Merci. Merci Israël pour...
Thank you, and thank you, Israel, for raising that question. We do indeed endeavor to ensure we have maximum participation, and Matthias and I certainly feel very strongly that no decisions should be taken behind anybody's back. That's why earlier when I made my presentations, I did say that even if we have a virtual meeting, we have to ensure that as many people as possible participate. We also want to ensure that we fully respect our rules governing quorum. That is fundamental, as is maximum participation. That is why we're going to be looking at all of this with our members and people with whom we work at our joint meetings with the Animals Committee to ensure that we act as if we are having face-to-face meetings. In other words, it's not because we are having to deal with this COVID pandemic that we should in any way fail to respect our procedures. Thank you.
Respond to Simon's question, and I think Chair of the Animals Committee, did you want to follow up?
Yes, I can only confirm what just Flor, the PC chair, has mentioned. It is also for us absolutely clear that we will not work behind the back of anybody. So depending on the topic that we will be discussing in informal processes, we make sure that the interested parties and organizations are with us. So you don't need to worry about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Animals Committee Chair. And I trust that the members of the Standing Committee, having heard these reports, you can also report back to your regions and ensure that parties in your region are also aware. And we always have the Secretariat and the Chair's attention if we need it. So thank you. I don't see any further requests for the floor. I don't see any requests for the floor. Lots of buttons here. So perhaps I will leave it at that. We will return again to the question of how we progress in the future. And Flora has indicated some considerations regarding possible virtual meetings. And I definitely want to turn to that point at the end of our agenda. But before we do, let's turn to the fourth item we discussed, put on the agenda, which is information regarding future decisions via the Postal Procedure Rule 20. In particular, right now on the table, I have two items. One that the Secretariat has submitted on behalf of Guinea, I believe, and one that Canada has submitted on behalf of the North American region. So I think I will first turn to the Secretary General to describe the first item, and I trust everyone has already received the email to start that postal procedure. So Secretary General, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and apologies that I have to switch cameras because one is not working anymore. And I'm having some problems with connections. I hope I'm being loud and clear. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. These platforms do take a bit of bandwidth. So on this issue of the recommendation to exceptionally allow Guinea to authorize the export of a pre-convention stock of Pterocarpus erinaceus, I know that it has been sent out on Friday, I believe, in the 3 languages. We have then yesterday sent out an official translation of the letter from Guinea in English, because we had to do an unofficial translation because of delays from the Christmas period, the holiday period. Just in general, because I know you have everything in front of you, but just to give a little bit of background information, we have sent to you, of course, this urgent recommendation for intersessional decision-making under Rule 20 of the Rules of Procedure of the Standing Committee. The recommendation was made in the context of the application of Article 13 in Guinea to enable a decision to be made prior to the 73rd session of the Standing Committee regarding the wish of Guinea to export a stock of pre-convention specimens of Pterocarpus erinaceus. Guinea has been subject to a recommendation, as you are aware, to suspend all commercial trade since 2013. And this recommendation was made following a fraudulent issuance of CITES documents that led to the illegal export of a number of great apes from Guinea to China, and other issues related to the implementation of the convention in Guinea. As you all know, the scam itself has been dealt with several years ago, and there have been recognizable efforts to strengthen compliance and enforcement in Guinea. At several of the Standing Committee meetings, the Standing Committee has been reviewing the implementation of these recommendations that were made in 2013 based on the report. For example, the 71st meeting was based on the report of the Secretariat who went on mission to Guinea in early January 2019. During this mission, the Secretariat was made aware of this pre-convention stockpile of Pterocarpus that had been illegally harvested and confiscated prior to the inclusion of the species in the appendices. At Standing Committee 71, after reading this report and considering it, the committee members and parties commended Guinea on its progress. Many members and parties supported the recommendations proposed by the Secretariat and requested more detailed information regarding the safeguards to be put in place for the export of the stockpile of these pre-convention Pterocarpus to ensure that the export would not be a driver of illegal logging. Some parties also spoke in favor of lifting the trade suspension and allowing the export of the stockpiled. So the committee agreed on a new set of recommendations to bring Guinea into full compliance. And they specifically recommended adopting adequate safeguards to mitigate any potential risks associated with the export of this stockpile of pre-convention Pterocarpus, including a system to identify the logs to be exported and a possible establishment of a voluntary zero quota for export of Pterocarpus erinaceus harvested after the inclusion of the species in Appendix 2. So this would be after 2 January 2017. In the message that we have sent out to the Standing Committee, we have highlighted that Guinea has continued to make significant efforts to address the concerns and the recommendations of the Standing Committee, including regarding this pre-convention stockpile. Now, because of the continuous deterioration of the stockpile, the costs related to its maintenance and security, as well as the uncertainty as the date of the next session of the Standing Committee, Guinea has approached the Secretariat and requested this procedure under Rule 20. They have put in place the requested safeguard measures to ensure that the transparency and regularity of the export procedure of the stockpile will be guaranteed, and we've sent that information to you in the attachments of that message sent on Friday. They are summarized also in document SC 2020 Information 4. The Secretariat therefore recommends that the Standing Committee allow Guinea to authorize on an exceptional basis the issuance of pre-convention certificates for the export of the 14,000 square meters of pre-convention specimens of Pterocarpus, while at the same time maintaining the original suspension of commercial trade currently in force with regard to Guinea until the Standing Committee can meet again and review the implementation of the recommendations of the Standing Committee relating to the application of Article 13. So now that you have this in your hands, it has been explained in the message that was sent what the recommendation would be, which would be this exceptional allowance to export and import this stock of pre-convention specimens, to maintain all the other recommendations, and to request the Secretariat to issue a notification to the parties to take into account these decisions of the Standing Committee. It would have to go through the process of Rule 20, which means that by 17 February, we expect for you that you comment on those recommendations and let us know if there's anything that needs to be changed, that needs to be amended. We have also now communicated this recommendation via notification, and we have invited others to make. We invite others to provide their comments on these two recommendations, and we will ensure that any comments that we receive are communicated to the members. Following the period of 40 days, we will follow the procedures in paragraphs 2, 3, and 4 of Rule 20. So we will be in contact with you again after the end of the 40-day period concerning the steps we are to take. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretary General. So as Yvonne indicated, the Rule 20 process has begun for this particular request, the recommendation to exceptionally authorize the export of this pre-convention stock. So in terms of the decision-making, that's happening via the postal process, and your reactions and comments are requested for mid-February. So at this time, what I'd ask the Standing Committee to do is if you have any questions, if you want any clarifications or any remarks or observations regarding this request, this would be an opportune moment to provide them. It would be useful to myself and to the Secretary General. And otherwise, I look forward to your consultations with your region and your further inputs via the postal procedure on this particular question. I have a request to speak from Maroc. So please, Hayat, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me now? So I'd like to thank you as the representative of Morocco and a member of the Standing Committee for the Africa region. I'd like to thank the Secretariat for submitting this urgent draft recommendation so that a decision can be made in accordance with Article 20 of the Rules of Procedure of the Standing Committee. After looking at the documents that were received and bearing in mind the serious deterioration of the stockpile and the costs that are linked to maintaining it safely, and also the concerns about the uncertainty of the date of the next Standing Committee meeting, we consider that the urgency of the situation justifies the use of the application of Article 20 so that they can use this stock in favourable conditions. And the documents that we received from the Ministry of State of Benin from September 2020 and the safeguarding measures associated with the transparency and regularity of the export procedure. So within this process and in accordance with Article 20, we support this recommendation and that a decision be made between the sessions of the committee so that they can export these pre-convention stockpiles. Thank you.
Thank you, Morocco, and thank you for speaking in favor of the request. So that gives us a good indication of the views from your area in the procedure. If there's any other questions or comments regarding this particular decision to be taken, I will seek requests for the floor. And if not, I will turn to the next one. Okay. Okay. Seeing no further requests for the floor, I want to thank the Secretary General for presenting that, and also Morok for your comments on behalf of your region. As noted, the postal procedure has begun, and so I will look forward to your further comments via email by, I believe the deadline is February 17th. So thank you very much. The next item that has been shared with you in terms of a possible postal procedure is a recommendation to establish a new intersessional working group to consider what role, if any, CITES could play in reducing the risks of future zoonotic disease emergence associated with international wildlife trade. So I will present this for the North American region. So the North American region is presenting this proposal for an intersessional working group to the Standing Committee. We have not yet begun a formal postal procedure. The North American region wished to first provide the opportunity for the Standing Committee to see our suggestions and provide any comments that they might have. In particular, the North American region would suggest forming an intersessional working group on this topic, given it is timely and given that there has been quite a bit of international discussion on the role of wildlife trade and international wildlife trade in the transmission of zoonotic diseases. In the region, we have been approached and heard from a number of stakeholders and interested parties regarding various approaches that CITES could take or a role that CITES could play in this particular area. We've also seen a lot of discussion in other fora and in various virtual settings on the role of CITES. And so given that there is a significant amount of international interest and attention in overall in zoonotic disease transmission and also in the aspect of wildlife trade and international wildlife trade, we in the North American region thought it would be timely for the Standing Committee members to form an intersessional working group and bring some of this discussion into our CITES fora. As you've heard from the Secretary General, the CITES Secretariat has been tracking the discussions around this topic internationally. And so, as I'm sure many of you have, and so the goal here for the North American region right now is not necessarily to come to any strict conclusions, but really to be able to start engaging with CITES parties on this important topic within the CITES fora in order to share views on the various aspects of wildlife trade and zoonotic disease transmission and emergence, some of the contributions that CITES might be able to make, some opportunities that might exist that we as CITES parties would recommend being taken advantage of, or any constraints in terms of the limits of CITES roles. And then in doing so, the working group would report to the Standing Committee, who would ultimately bring recommendations to the Conference of the Parties, where a more formal mandate would be sought. So the proposal from the North American region right now is to for the Standing Committee to agree to adopt such an intersessional working group with the terms of reference that have been proposed in the document we provided. And that is a proposal that the North American region will submit for postal decision of the Standing Committee. So it will come again to you all via email, and then the postal procedure, the Rule 20 procedure would be followed, whereby your comments and input would be sought for 40 days, and then based on that, a recommendation would be made. So I appreciate the opportunity to present our thoughts from the North American region, and I look forward to hearing any reactions or feedback from the members of the Standing Committee. And I note that our colleagues from Belgium requested the floor, and I believe you may have requested the floor even for the earlier one. So please, Belgium, you have the floor, followed by Indonesia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize for coming too late, but indeed my comment is regarding the previous topic on Guinea. And I have noticed in the proposal from Guinea that there would be an observer position for the European Union. or the EU delegation in that region. And we were wondering what that position would entail and what is really necessary and what is going to be required by that EU delegation, because we are not really sure on that, and we would ask for more information if that will be possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Belgium. I will ask the Secretary General to take note of your question and we'll return to it. Unless, Yvonne, do you have any information you can provide to Belgium right now?
Hi, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Belgium. I believe that they're speaking of the European delegation that is in country, but and because they have been aware of all of what has been happening when we also had the visit to Guinea, we had discussions with the European delegation there in country. But let me just check to see if there's anything more than that, and I'll come back to you in a second. But I'm pretty sure that they're talking about the delegation in country who has been aware of all of this request from Guinea and supportive of the request of Guinea. I'll come back to you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Yvonne. And so we'll see if there's more. And if not, I'll ask the Secretary General to follow up with yourself and provide a bit more of the background. So I will turn next to, I believe, Indonesia requested the floor, and then that will be followed by New Zealand and Peru. So Indonesia, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for initiating today's informal meeting and for the Secretariat for facilitating the meeting. In response to North America's proposal to establish a new intersectional working group to consider the role of CITES could play in reducing the risk of zoonotic disease, Indonesia would like to raise a concern on whether discussing zoonotic disease is within CITES mandate or not. Because to our understanding, Standing Committee can only establish a working group if it is relevant to the implementation and enforcement of the convention. And zoonotic disease have been discussed by more competent organizations such as WHO, FAO, and World Organization for Animal Health. We worry that discussing zoonotic disease in CITES will add burden on CITES' current workload and also can lead to unclear and ambiguous direction. Our concern is that a working group on zoonotic disease could eventually recommend additional health and sanitary measures, which only make some parties more competitive and other parties less competitive on international trade in endangered species. So Indonesia is looking forward to hearing further explanation from Chair and other ST members and the Secretariat regarding this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Indonesia, for those very good points. I've taken note and I will respond on behalf of the region after we've heard from the other interveners. So next I had New Zealand, and New Zealand will be followed by Peru. New Zealand, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tēnā koutou katoa, greetings to all participants, and I apologise for my lack of a camera. We've been given new technology, and my new technology doesn't have a camera with it, so I'll make sure I sort that out for next time. From an Oceania perspective, we welcome the suggestion for the establishment of an intersessional working group to evaluate the potential role of CITES in reducing the risk for further emerging infectious zoonotic diseases as it relates to wildlife trade specifically. We recognise the link between biodiversity loss and the emergence of zoonotic infectious disease, and we support an integrated and One Health approach in the evaluation of this work. So we also consider it to be a timely recommendation and look forward to considering it through the provisions of Rule 20. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. Peru, please, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias. Buenos días con todos. Es un gusto saber que están bien. Y yo quisiera pronunciarme sobre.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and I'm pleased to hear the proposal from the working group on the subject of zoonotic diseases. I think it's an excellent proposal, very necessary, given that the subject of zoonotic diseases is very much linked to management of fauna. We see it as very necessary to have a focus on health And we think that we should look at that balance between environmental, animal, and human health. It will bring many benefits. We have more than 40 zoonotic diseases identified in Peru, and they can seriously affect human health. In addition to rabies, we all know about that impact. So during the pandemic, from the very beginning, we've been in contact and we've had a virtual working group with countries in the South America and Central America region. And so we are united in looking for alternatives and improvements in the management of COVID-19, and that we should take up this responsibility, which is very closely linked to management of wildlife, in particular since we authorize the export of live species. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, Peru, for that intervention. I'm going to see if there's any other requests, and then I'm going to turn to address the comments. Okay. So thank you very much for those comments, which are exactly what the North American region was hoping to hear, was a bit of a view, given that this is, as Indonesia pointed out, a new and emerging topic, in terms of your regions and where your thinking is on this issue. So I appreciate the support from New Zealand and Peru. Speaking to Indonesia, I am very aware of the concerns you're raising, and certainly in the region we have thought about in terms of mandate and what the CITES Convention is meant to accomplish and what it's not meant to accomplish. So, for example, your commentary on CITES not being well positioned to provide detailed sanitary measures for trade, I fully take the point. I think what we're looking at here is similar to what other colleagues have raised, which is that wildlife trade has a part in the transmission of zoonotic diseases. And as a convention that is focused on wildlife trade, international wildlife trade in particular, there may or may not be a role that we wish to play as a convention. And this is obviously a decision for the parties to make. But as these conversations are occurring internationally, the region thought it was appropriate for the standing committee to start considering what kind of advice we would want to provide to the parties in terms of what role CITES may have. Certainly, internationally, we've heard a number of different ideas, including potentially working to expand the mandate of CITES, and we have some views on that we wish to share with the Standing Committee through this intersessional discussion. There may also be other opportunities in CITES. We have formed really good partnerships with other organizations, such as our work in IQWIC and working with some of the other international enforcement organizations, recognizing that they have an expertise, but that the work being done in those organizations also is relevant to our work here in CITES, and in turn that we wish to provide our advice and expertise. And so it's in that frame that the North American region wished to present this idea for a working group. I think, Indonesia, your points are really well taken, and North America would hope that you would join the working group and raise those points so that we are able to have a really fulsome discussion of all elements of this issue in anticipation of sort of this being an ongoing issue with likely some long-term impacts in terms of how we view movement of live animals internationally for quite some time. So I hope that helps explain a little bit of the intent from the North American region. As mentioned, I will be submitting this to the Standing Committee via email for postal decision, but I was really grateful to have the opportunity to present this on behalf of the region and get some early reactions. And so if there's no more requests for the floor, perhaps I will leave it at that, recognizing that, of course, decision-making will be subsequent to this. So I see the Secretary General raised her hand visually, so I will turn to Yvonne, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think because I'm connected, I have to raise my hand. Thank you. No, just to follow up on the question from Belgium, to confirm that it is the European Union delegation in country, that they are going to witness it, be an observer to the whole procedure of the export and of this timber if it were to be allowed, and that they would be as a Yes, as an observer to ensure that everything is carried out according to what has been accepted or accepted by the standing committee. So I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary General. And Belgium, I hope that helps answer your questions, but I do invite you to continue to liaise with Yvonne and the members of the Secretariat in order to get any further clarifications on that point. Okay, I don't see any further requests for the floor, so I will move us to the next item on our agenda, which is on a different tab, so give me one moment. Thank you. I'm still learning here. Okay, so before I neglected to mention that. So as you know, the Secretariat and North America has brought 2 items forward that we will be going through postal procedure. Before I turn to the last item on our agenda, which is a fairly substantive discussion, I would just invite any standing committee members who may be interested in engaging the standing committee in a postal decision to identify any items at this time. And of course, you've had this agenda item in front of you, so I imagine if you had something to present, you would have requested the floor. Okay, so I don't see any requests for the floor, so I will indeed turn to the next item on the agenda. So the last item we wanted to talk was about meetings of the committees in the upcoming 2021. When last we spoke, there was a plan and some tentative space set aside to have a face-to-face meeting of our committee in April. I know that will not be possible for us. Certainly from Canada, there will be no authorization for international travel in the spring, and I suspect this to be the case much through the North American summer and into more of the North American fall, so September, October. So in light of that, I think it's timely to have a good discussion about how we wish to proceed, as our last discussion was early on in this pandemic process, when perhaps our expectations were that the resolution would be a little bit more quick than it has been. And similarly, I'm interested in understanding the Animals and Plants Committee further. We heard from Flora about some of the considerations and thoughts from the Plants Committee, and understanding what the options are. So maybe perhaps I will start with the Animals and Plants Committee, and I'll start with the Secretary General, as I believe there's some background and some information that you wish to provide on that. And then I could turn to the committee members, the committee chairs, to provide additional information. So, Secretary General, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And you may have heard from what Fleur hinted at, that we have had an offer from France to host a face-to-face meeting of the Animals and Plants Committees in 2021. We received this late last year, and their initial thinking is that this meeting they could offer would be held in the city of Lyon, and the dates that they are considering are late June, early July. Now, this is a very generous offer, very kind of France to offer to host these meetings back to back. As you know, we have been trying to look for a host earlier on for these ACPC meetings because of the refurbishment that is going on at the beginning of this year, the first half of 2021 at the CICG. However, when this was all started, of course, COVID wasn't around, and now we have to take into consideration these dates because of COVID, because we still don't know very well how things will be in terms of attendance, what kind of attendance these committee meetings would have if they were to be held in late June, early July in terms of geographical representation, for example, and numbers of people who would be allowed to travel around late June, early July, especially with not known completely how the vaccination program will take place in all the countries. So we feel that it might be unlikely to have a face-to-face meeting in the first half of 2021 because of these COVID-related travel and entry restrictions. But of course, meeting later in the year would make it very difficult for the scientific committees to be able to have time to prepare inputs for a possible meeting of the standing committee in the fall, if all goes well and we could actually hold that one face-to-face as well. So I have responded as the Secretary General, and since the invitation was sent to us late last year, informing France that we were going to have this meeting today to present it to the Standing Committee and have a discussion about the meetings of the AC and PC, and also giving some hesitation about it being held in the first half of 2021, and asking that if they would be amenable to considering keeping this as an extended possibility, as an extended invitation, if there were some decision that it wouldn't be possible to have the meeting in the first half of 2021 or on the dates that they are suggesting in late June, early July. Our concerns, of course, would be that we could start planning for those meetings, but if we find that things are not settled yet concerning the pandemic, we would then have a real problem that the work would not have been carried out by other means or in other ways, because we have put basically all our eggs in one basket for a physical meeting. So I leave that for you to discuss. The chairs of the Animals Committee and Plants Committee may have more to say on this, but this is what the Secretariat has recommended. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretary General. And I recall when the Animals Committee Chair gave his report that he had some reflections that he was reserving for this point. So perhaps, Matthias, I'll turn first to you to provide your additional insights.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As mentioned, we did have a virtual meeting of the members of the Animals Committee in late November. And at that meeting, we asked the members about their views about face-to-face meetings versus virtual meetings, noting that the alternative would be to have no meeting at all, and whether or not they think they are likely to be able to travel in the first half of 2021. And the general consensus was, of course, it would be better to have a face-to-face meeting, because that way we can advance much better. But it may not be possible in the current situation, with a significant number of members indicating that it is unlikely they would be able to travel in the first half of 2021. And this would, of course, mean we would have big problems having a quorum to reach any decision if we would have a physical meeting, which is, of course, not what we really want. So we agreed that we would continue to look at the possibility of alternative options, including virtual meetings, with the possibility of more numerous small meetings on specific topics or meeting hubs to try to facilitate greater transparency and participation. So we have been planning at the moment to have more virtual meeting in June, July of this year of 2021, to be able to provide input for the Standing Committee in the fall. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks, Matthias. And Floyd, you gave us a similar conclusion from your committee earlier, but did you want to add anything in terms of the planning for the Plants Committee?
Thank you, Madam. I do think that the matter has pretty well covered between what the Secretary General had to say as well as the chair of the Plants Committee. The pandemic has really put us in a very exceptional situation, and it could very well be that this will become the new normal, unfortunately. We're going to have to find ways that allow us to continue to work. Otherwise, we simply won't do anything. We're not going to be able to implement CITES if everything gets frozen. So we have the possibility of asking France if the invitation might be extended a little bit later. That is a possibility, and we should also continue to look at what we can do virtually. And then we also have to bear in mind that what we're having to put up with today might not be what we have in the future. Now, it could very well be that things will clear up, but then we might find ourselves facing another zoonotic disease or pandemic in a few months' time. In other words, I think we have to do everything we can to meet in person, but we should also bear in mind that there is every likelihood that such meetings will not be able to take place. So we have to always have a plan B and ensure that any virtual meetings have maximum participation and respect quorum rules and act as and are treated like real meetings. Thank you.
Thanks to both of the committee chairs and to the Secretariat for those observations. And what I picked out both from your reports and from what you're saying is that you're recognizing that for your committee members, while it's preferable to have a face-to-face meeting, it's very difficult to do in the first half of 2021. It doesn't seem possible under the current COVID situation and travel restrictions associated. And that puts a bit of pressure on the committee to be able to deliver a lot of the items that are mandated, particularly those that also need to be reviewed by the standing committee, such that the committees are exploring taking virtual meetings or addressing some of these issues virtually. And I think that's commendable for you to continue to explore moving the work forward. And I really appreciate your efforts in doing so. And so at this point, for me, the question is simply to turn to the members of the standing committee to see if you have any questions regarding the issues that have been raised by the committees and the Secretariat and their plan to try to move forward and address those issues, including through possible virtual meetings of their committees. And I don't see any requests for the floor. Although, of course, sometimes there's a bit of a lag. So if you do have a request, feel free to ask to request the floor, and I can always turn back to our committee members and committee chairs. But I think that does now help turn us to our own committee and what our plans are for the standing committee in light of the current situations. As mentioned, for what Flor and Mateus have stated, travel can be more than a little challenging for the first half of 2021, which I think impacts some of our previous discussions. And I'll turn to the Secretariat momentarily to talk about what has been arranged. And that, as a committee chair, that makes me quite mindful of the fact that it may be that our next opportunity to meet and make decisions on our extensive mandate is in the fall. And that's quite shortly before plans for the next COP. And so I wish to explore with you, committee members, your flexibility and in looking at some alternate means for moving forward decisions in light of the current situation. And I have some thoughts on issues we could tackle. But before I do, I will first ask the Secretary General to just give us a bit of an outline on the plans that have been made, the possible face-to-face meetings planned, and any alternatives that might exist, as well as in any information you might have had on the next COP. So, Yvonne, can I turn the floor over to you, please?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And yes, indeed, we had made some plans, and you may recall that there were some discussions about the possibility that if everything went better in 2021, we could try to have a shorter meeting of the Standing Committee in the spring of 2021 to be able to have a lesser burden for what we had planned for in September of 2021 as a standing committee meeting. We reserved meeting rooms at the Palais des Nations for 6 to 9 April. And as you can imagine, and as the chair has said in her emails, it is really unrealistic to expect that this meeting could be held face to face, given the fact that Switzerland is still having a lot of difficulties right now controlling the virus as it is happening globally. There are many restrictions, many measures put in place. We are still working from home. So it seems less and less likely, even though the vaccination campaign has been started in Switzerland, that there will be a possibility of having this meeting in April. But those are still there for your consideration in this discussion. We have also booked, of course, the meetings, the usual meeting rooms in the CICG and the conference center in Geneva for a face-to-face meeting from 20 to 24 September. We have also set aside the possibility of meeting in the evenings and having a spillover into the weekend, understanding that this would probably be a quite heavy agenda for the standing committee if it's not possible to meet before. So it would be then the weekend of 18 to 19 September, then the week of the 20 to 24 September, and the Saturday afterwards, 25th September. Of course, if finances are available to cover the extra costs, which we would then discuss with the Finance and Budget Subcommittee for all of the extra days that we would be using the CICG. We have figured out that the document deadline for such a meeting would be around 20 July 2021. We do think that this meeting is possible, not as unlikely as we think that it would be for April. I think we have more positivity concerning later in September to be able to hold this meeting. So this has all been reserved, it's arranged, and just waiting to hear if this will be possible and what the agreement of the standing committee would be. On the possibilities of the COP, we have sent letters to the new Minister of Costa Rica, Minister of Environment of Costa Rica. You may have heard that the former Minister of Environment of Costa Rica is now the head of the GEF Secretariat. They have a new minister in place, and we had the opportunity to meet yesterday virtually, and we had a discussion about the arrangements for the Conference of the Parties planned to be held, COP19 to be held in 2022 in San Jose, Costa Rica. We have to be aware, and she has made us aware, that the moment that they made that invitation in August 2019 is a very different moment than what all the world is experiencing right now, especially financially. They had been given quite a large budget proposal from the conference center in Costa Rica to hold this meeting, which now they think it would be very difficult for them to afford. So we are now going to explore with them ways in which we can take another look at that budget that they have been proposed by the conference center to see what is necessary, what is absolutely required, because we sent to them our requisites, of course, our basic requirements, but there were other things that have been added to that budget. Since she's new, she needs to go through this again, and we will help with that. And we are looking over the next couple of weeks to see how that can be changed. And Costa Rica has said very honestly that they have to talk to donor countries. They will have to talk to others who can possibly assist with some of the funding, and to be able to come back to us in a few weeks to let us know whether they will be able to go through with the COP as they had foreseen and as they wish to do, but just that these are very difficult times. So the news, I want to remain positive. I want all of us to remain positive, but the news is as we might expect during these difficult times financially for many countries. But we are looking into it, and we will support Costa Rica as much as possible. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Yvonne, and thank you for that update from your discussions with Costa Rica. I don't know if we have any colleagues from Costa Rica on the on the call who wish to take the floor, but if you do, please do request to speak, and I'd be happy to hear your perspectives as well. Yeah, certainly, as you mentioned, it is an incredibly challenging time, and there's a lot of uncertainty. There remains a lot of uncertainty. I think we hoped about a year ago that we would have some more certainty by this perspective, but clearly we don't. And so I am looking forward to a good discussion with the committee about how to continue to advance in light of that uncertainty. But I see my colleague from Costa Rica, I believe, requested the floor. So I wonder if I could turn the floor over to Costa Rica.
Sí, buenos días.
Greetings, and thank you, Madam, for giving me the floor. Indeed, as the Secretary General has already said, we have had a meeting on the subject. We have discussed the possibility of Costa Rica hosting the COP. We're now, however, in a different situation, and there have been changes in the ministry. So we are going to have to think also about the elections that we have forthcoming in February and in April. And that too has called into question possible dates for our hosting the COP. All of this is under discussion, and we are certainly going to keep the Secretary General apprised of the situation and let her know when we're in a position to take a decision. It is certainly our hope that Costa Rica will be able to host the COP. We will keep you aware of developments. Thank you, Madam.
And so, yeah, the committee will look forward to any continued updates. We, again, really appreciate the invitation from Costa Rica, and certainly I am hoping that one of my very first post-COVID trips will be to Costa Rica and to enjoy the incredibly amazing countryside and wildlife that you benefit from so much. I haven't been to Costa Rica in many years, and I look forward to visiting again. But it does, of course, continue to speak to the levels of uncertainty that are existing. And so it's difficult to make very long-range plans, but there are some concrete elements right now that I think merit our discussion in terms of how we move forward. So as we heard from the Secretary General, there are room reservations for our face-to-face meeting in September. At the current plan with the March COP, that meeting would be our only face-to-face meeting intersessionally this period. And as you know, we have a very significant agenda. And so given that we cannot have a face-to-face in April, I wanted to explore the comfort of the Standing Committee in terms of a possible virtual session or some other combinations similar to what has been discussed amongst the Animals and Plants Committee. And to gauge your level of interest in exploring moving some topics in that manner. For example, while I wait for you to request the floor and provide your views on how we move forward, I note that at the beginning, the Secretary General gave us a good update on the work of some of the Standing Committee working groups. And so some of these working groups may be in a position to present some of their outcomes to the committee. And if we could address those in a virtual forum, for example, that might help alleviate some of the pressures that would exist if we tried to move everything to a September meeting. And while right now I am planning in my head as if we are trying to progress to that September meeting, I'm also very cognizant that even a September meeting could have some levels of uncertainty depending on how this pandemic continues to evolve. And so I do think it behooves us as a committee to think about what alternatives we might have that we feel comfortable with and that meet our requisite of being transparent and making sure that we have good and appropriate buy-in so that these decisions are legitimately received by the Conference of the Parties. For example, I think that there's a number of agenda items that are important and technical, but perhaps could be addressed virtually by their nature of being very specific or very targeted, or having a lower sort of sphere of participation where the transparency of a virtual session would be sufficient to bring comfort to all those who are interested. But I do look forward to your comments and your reactions and your views in terms of how you see the next year progressing for our committee. And that will help me determine a proposal for how we move forward. So I will see if there's any questions. And I do see a request from Kuwait. So I will turn to Kuwait first. There seems to be some challenges in providing the floor to Kuwait, so I'll ask the operators to try to liaise with Kuwait to address those challenges. But I see a request as well from New Zealand, so perhaps I will turn first to New Zealand and then we will turn back to Kuwait. New Zealand, you have the floor.
We share the continued uncertainty about international travel for work purposes from our part of the world, and we have no certainty about when that will change. We would definitely support looking at prioritising agenda items that can be dealt with virtually in a fair and equitable and transparent way, and seeing how much we can progress without face-to-face meetings if the wider committee agree to that. We would support looking at all different avenues of facilitating our work program, because we're very aware of what an ambitious work program it is, and with the sequence of meetings we're concerned about the ability to achieve all the tasks we've been set. So we would support some sort of prioritisation and looking at how we can progress at least some matters through different mechanisms in the interim. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand, and thank you. That does give me a sense of your level of comfort, which will help me come up with a proposal. Kuwait, it looks like you've made it. So Kuwait, please, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for the update. I see these are very new information for all of us. Regarding the AC and BC, and also the update on the standing committee. So I would appreciate if we get a different scenario as we get the last time, and we share it with my region so I can get the view. My personal perspective is that I can accept the virtual, but I need to know the ability of the other countries to accept this proposal. And also, as I sent you earlier a message regarding the update of the Secretariat for the working group, so we would like to have a list of all the ongoing working group, and also a list of the group that didn't start yet, so we can also see and have some priority to start the work, maybe intersessionally or something related to that. So my request is different scenarios regarding the AC and BC, and also the standing committee, and the actual situation now so I can report it to my region and come back to you with a decision. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kuwait. And indeed, that was my intention. I don't expect a decision to be making now. I just wanted to get a bit of what I call a signals check in government speak to get a sense of if the committee would be open to entertaining some proposals for a different approach, or if it would be preferable to just try to have a very long September meeting. And so from both of your interventions, I hear some openness to receiving a proposal of different approaches we might take as a committee for a subsequent decision. So I'll continue to see if there's any other comments from other committee members. So you know, some of the ideas that I have been thinking about in my head is to propose a potential shortened agenda for an April, more or less, virtual session where we could look at some agenda items that are close to conclusion, depending on the outcomes of some of our working groups we've established, or just get some reports, finish up some things that have been mandated and perhaps accomplished by the Secretariat. I don't have my full standing committee work program in front of me right now, so I can't off the top of my head remember the few that I was thinking of. But the idea would be to have a shortened agenda to try to move some issues that we think could reasonably be concluded so that we free up space for the substantive discussions in the fall. And so I'll be seeking views in terms of how comfortable parties feel about that sort of concept as an agenda and as a meeting. We would be looking at a platform like this one and be discussing issues amongst the committee. We'd be looking, however, to look at opportunities to open it up. Right now, as you know, we have live streaming, and so there are opportunities for our country's CITES parties who are not members of the committee or observers to observe our meeting, and we will look at opening up how we can make sure there's good interaction. It'll depend, frankly, on bandwidth and the capacity of the systems. Other thoughts I had was if that was felt to be overly difficult, perhaps. I know time zone is a real issue. I congratulate New Zealand for their ability to stay up late. So if that's a difficult thing, the other thought I could create a calendar where we could have short sessions like this one, dealing with one or two agenda items at most and moving those in a virtual setting. So these are the types of proposals that I want to bring to the committee in a written form for some quick, like you said, Sharifa, consultations amongst your regions and then feedback so we can plan to move to September. But again, given that we have this opportunity to be face-to-face, I did want to take some time to hear any other comments or views or reactions you're getting from your regions. And however, I don't see any further requests for the floor, and that's fine. I hope everything was clear. And I will definitely follow up. So I see David Morgan wishes to speak. So I'll turn to David, and then perhaps we will close this item and conclude our meeting. So David, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and hello to all, wherever you may be. This is simply to make an intervention on behalf of Congo. The colleague from Congo is having trouble getting his microphone to work, but he wished it to be recorded that he fully supports the considerations which were given by the Chair of the Plants Committee in relation to future meetings of the CITES Fora. So we'd like that recorded. Thank you very much indeed for that.
Thanks. Thank you, David. And I'm sorry to hear that our colleague from Congo's microphone isn't working. That's unfortunate. Overall, I have found this platform to be one of the more effective ones I've used so far in multiple meetings. So I will see if there's any last requests for the floor, and then I'll see that we are close to the concluding time of our meeting, and so I will wrap up. Okay, so I don't see any requests for the floor. So just to wrap up, as a follow-up from this meeting, I heard from our colleague from Kuwait a bit of an update on sort of the list of working groups and their level of activity. And so I will ask the Secretariat to assist me in preparing a short summary of our meeting, and we will include that information in the summary. Thank you, Yvonne. I take your nods as a yes. We will add any additional information on the activities that have been taken, and including the advancement of the various issues on the Standing Committee's agenda. We've heard the updates on the tool Rule 20, and so you will shortly see North America's proposal being brought to you for decision through an email postal procedure. And then finally and significantly, as part of my report back to the committee, I will prepare a proposal on how we might consider advancing the work of the committee between now and September, in light of the fact that we will not be having a face-to-face short meeting in April. So I'll prepare that proposal expeditiously so that you can consult amongst your regions and provide your more detailed feedback to me in terms of issues and how to advance them. So I want to thank you all very much. And before I close the meeting, I will turn to Yvonne to see if you have any concluding remarks. I think I just lost the Secretary General. That's not a good sign. Okay, well, we'll see if the Secretary General has an opportunity to rejoin us. But in terms, otherwise, I will just provide my concluding remarks, which is really just a very quick thank you to all of you. I know I know you have all likely been participating in a number of electronic meetings and Zoom calls, and so I appreciate the challenges associated with them, and thus your extra efforts in joining us today. I was very happy to see all your smiling faces from around the world, and I really do hope to have that opportunity to see you virtually and someday soon, I hope, in person, so that we can again continue our close collaboration and important work on CITES and wildlife trade issues. I remain fully committed to continuing this role right up till the next COP, and I really do appreciate very much the commitment that you all have shown in maintaining our momentum. And particular congratulations to the chairs and to the Secretariat for your support, and of course to the interpreters, who I hope have had a good experience and have been able to hear us clearly. So unless I see the Secretary General, and I'm trying to see if there's any messages. I don't see any messages, so I will just conclude the meeting. Thank you very much. I will follow up by email, and I hope that for those of you who are starting your day, I hope you have a good day. And for those of you who are ending, I hope you have a good rest.